Hi.
Hello. We've had a few mishaps lately. Quite a few people have requested PDFs over the last few months, and we've successfully sent them via email. We've asked people to send us an email. You don't have to identify yourself on the email, just request the PDFs. Mm-hmm. We have done that responding to comments where requests were made for specific PDFs recently, but several times nothing happened, and we're not quite sure what to make of that, except maybe there's some sensitivity. But we just wanted to do a video specifically on the PDFs we have available and what you have to do to get them, to make it clearer than it has been apparently in the past as to how to proceed with that.
So if you email us personally, we're not passing that around to anyone. And our email is dvmapologia@gmail.com.
DVM Apologia, one word, right?
Yes. And we will put it in the description so that you don't have to know how to spell apologia.
Just in case you can't remember that, DVM, David Vivian Max, Apologia, all one word, at gmail.com.
Yeah.
In the description.
So we will respect people's privacy. It's just so that we can send you the PDF. So we were going to tell you some of the specific PDFs that are available. The most popular ones, I'd say there's 4 that have been the most popular. The Cross, Door to Door, 607, and Divine Names.
Just maybe say something briefly about each of these. The Cross one is from our multi-video series in which we read the PDF document in question. So if you want the printed version of it, the Cross PDF.
Mm-hmm. The Door to Door?
Door to Door one is also a multi-video series where I read straight from the booklet. So if you want a copy of the booklet in PDF, that's this one.
The 607?
607 Witnesses Against the Watchtower. That was one of the first documents we did back in the 1990s, explicitly dealing with, is there any justification for the exile period being from the destruction of Jerusalem, which the Watchtower uniquely dates to the year 607, and the release of the captives from Babylon, which they date accurately from 539 to 537. The date of Jerusalem is the problem. So in this particular tract, we have listed 607 sources. And we've given you the details of those 607 sources. So if you want that one, 607 witnesses.
And the Divine Names?
Divine Names is a tracing through Old Testament history of the development of the revelation of the Divine Names from the very first, i.e. after the global flood, through henotheism, that is from henotheism to polytheism to monotheism. And that's, again, several pages, Divine Names booklet.
Now, in case somebody's frantically writing all these down, they will be listed in the description. We'll list all the 21 videos that we're mentioning here. And then you can be specific when you want a PDF and say, I want this one from that list.
Yeah.
So some of the testimony ones, there's one that's called Vivian's Story, where I tell my exit from the Watchtower. There's a mini one attached to another DVD that gives David's story called He Gave Teachers, which is a list of the books that influenced him in his leaving the Watchtower.
It's a tracing of the influence of several writers and books upon me personally, but it's also a list, a comprehensive list of the great teachers of the church going back, well, nearly 2,000 years. So there's over 130 different teachers listed in here with a mini biography, the dates that they lived, etc., and also their key works.
And then there's one other one that's 8 reasons we left the Watchtower.
Which is a 10-page or so
letter that was composed when we were in the process of leaving the Watchtower, giving the 8 reasons that we had problems or concerns. And so we read that whole letter. Now, attached to it was 200 pages of documentation. That's not available. But the 10-page letter is. Okay, some of the other things that are also available, we have a whole series on the book of Daniel.
Yeah, that's the substance behind the 29 videos that we posted under Daniel and Jehovah's Witnesses. The videos were not straight from the booklet. The booklet is some 15 pages, 12, 15 pages, and it's just chock full of really good quotes about the book of Daniel. So there's a lot of supplementary material in that that didn't make it to the videos.
Yeah. There's one on Johannes Graber. You did a series on that. Right?
From a booklet called Truths from Two Tables, where we pointed out that according to Paul, you cannot be partaking of the table of the Lord and the table of demons, yet the doctrines of Johannes Graber are suspiciously very close to the Watchtower doctrines of the period of J.F. Rutherford. Why is that? This particular document was read into the camera, so you can get the printed version.
There's one called By What Authority?
That deals with the issue of how Christ validated, authenticated himself as Messiah by demonstration of God's omniscience and God's omnipresence. Sorry, not omnipresence, omnipotence and omniscience. And the omnipresence one we'll have to leave for the videos we're doing now on Psalm 139, also Solomon and Jeremiah.
The doctrine of Christianity, no, of Christology, the doctrine of Christology in the early church.
We used to have a regular magazine that we published in the late 90s and early 2000s, around the time Max was born, called a journal, and we wrote several articles for that. One of them that got the most response, both positive and negative, was on Christology. That is the doctrine of Christ that the early church held, and how the development of the doctrine of Christ, you can even see it in the New Testament itself. So this little booklet dealt with, this article, which became a booklet, dealt with the development of the doctrine of Christ in the New Testament and beyond.
Raiding Christendom's Pantry.
That one I read straight into the camera. A 2-page tract on just some of the sources the Watchtower uses, but never tells you who these men that they're quoting constantly are or were.
Humpty Dumpty hermeneutics.
We spent a lot of time in 2 series on Humpty Dumpty because the methodology the Watchtower uses to derive from Scripture their various doctrines is so chaotic that you need to speak to what is the correct way of interpreting the Bible. So there's 2 series that you might have seen on that. This is the article that is the basis of those 2 series, Humpty Dumpty hermeneutics.
The Little God of the Watchtower.
The Little God of the Watchtower, we haven't spent a lot of time on that. There are a couple of videos up on it. It bases around the book of Isaiah. There's no excuse for the Watchtower to have the little God they have, because what they need to have the orthodox doctrine of God from the Bible is just the book of Isaiah. Any of the major books might suffice, but I think of all the Bible books, Isaiah is the one that's most comprehensive about what we must believe about God himself.
Parasya?
Parasya is just a list of quotes from the great Greek scholars over the last 150 or so years who have spoken to what that word means, because over the generations, 5 generations, interestingly enough, going back over those 150 or so years, the Watchtowers consistently said that the word parasya means this, presence, which it does, but they've added to that the idea of invisible presence. And this document, the Parasya, tells you what Greek scholars actually say about this word parasya.
66 books a Jehovah's Witness shouldn't read.
Well, again, that's my personal testimony of what books meant to me, and specifically what the first books of Moses, the first 3 books of Moses, Genesis, Exodus, and Leviticus, did free me from my prejudices as a Jehovah's Witness.
Okay. Now, there's a few that, although Jehovah's Witnesses would be interested in it, I think that they're especially good for people who either have relatives that are witnesses or friends and they don't really know what to do, or for Christians who are interested in reaching out to witnesses. And we know we have some Christians who've been watching the videos just to learn more and understand witnesses. One is JW's and the Structure of Authority, a kind of chart, right?
It's a chart of the doctrinal differences between Christianity and Jehovah's Witnesses, but also on the flip side, it has the problem in a diagrammatic form. The diagram of Christian authority and doctrine derived from 1 Corinthians 15, and the diagram of the extremely complex structure of the Watchtower,
which is more like an upside
constructed.
down pyramid, right?
Yeah, it's kind of an inverted pyramid with 1914 and the Faithful and Discreet Slave as the foundation stones. Completely different structure than the Watchtower, which diagrams for everyone who wants to look at it and compare why you can't communicate with a Jehovah's Witness very effectively.
What to say to a Jehovah's Witness?
I think that goes with another one that's
Approaches to Jehovah's Witnesses?
to
Are
Jehovah's
they
Witnesses.
back to back? Maybe?
No, they're two different documents,
Okay.
both of which have separate PDFs, but one of them deals with the do's and don'ts that you'd have to observe if you're going to get into effective dialogue with the witnesses. And the other one deals with
Methods of approach.
the strengths and the weaknesses of each.
Right. There's also one called Destructive Religious Groups. So
More or
it's
less
generalized.
a psychological profile of the cult and why you have such problem communicating with people who are in cults. What you have to learn about them to effectively disarm them.
And then I think I didn't mention Basic Christian Library. We have a kind of outline of what would make a necessary Christian library.
Resources. I think there's at least 60 to 100 authors listed on the list with their most famous or most influential works. These are fantastic authors that we have personally sampled over the decades, so we can vouch for them, but we don't just list the ones that are our favorites. We list the ones that have had the biggest impact on Christian history and the world. And there's also a list of basic Bible tools like reference books, dictionaries, encyclopedias, and language tools.
Something that once you leave the Watchtower, you really need to start building a good library.
Yeah, and
Resources.
I'm ashamed to say we haven't used that one much yet, but we're advocating it now. The best way to get over the Watchtower is to have a solid Christian library yourself.
Right.
Is that the full list?
I think that was everything that I listed. So we will put them in the description. We'll list all the names, and we'll list our email in the description. And we'll give it a real nice basic title so that whenever you're looking for a PDF, you can check the list. And we'll probably make new lists as we put out more PDF offers.
Yeah, and we'll pray this method works better than the last one. Thanks.
Thanks.